A billionaire stands at a podium, cameras flashing like lightning. The press conference was supposed to be about business, mergers, acquisitions, the usual power plays. Instead, Preston Ward clears his throat and says 7 words that will break the internet. She cleaned my home, but she also cleaned my soul. The room erupts. Reporters shout questions. Phones light up across the world. Because everyone wants to know, who is she? And how does a maid become the most important person in a billionaire's life? This is a story of 2 people from completely different worlds. One lived in a glass mansion overlooking the city. The other worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. One had everything money could buy. The other had nothing but her dignity. And somehow, impossibly, she saved him. Not with grand gestures, not with romance, but with something far more powerful, the truth. Have you ever met someone who changed everything without even trying? Someone from a completely different world? Drop a comment. And if you're here for stories about real human connection, hit that subscribe button. You won't believe where this goes. Preston Ward was a man who controlled everything. His real estate empire stretched across 3 continents. His glass mansion in the hills was featured in architectural magazines. 12,000 square feet of marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and furniture that cost more than most people's houses. Every morning, he woke at 5:47 a.m., coffee at 6 o'clock, gym at 6:15, shower at 7 o'clock, breakfast, always the same meal at 7:30, in the office by 8:15. Precision, control, perfection to the world. Preston Ward had it all figured out, but the people who worked in his home knew better. The chef who prepared meals Preston barely touched. The driver who sat in silence during every commute. The housekeeper who noticed that the master bedroom hadn't been used in months. Preston slept in his study, if he slept at all. They saw what the public didn't. A man haunted by a ghost. 3 years earlier, his wife Catherine died. Cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. Preston had thrown money at every specialist, every experimental treatment, every possibility. Nothing worked. The day she died, something in Preston died too. He didn't cry at the funeral, didn't take time off work. Instead, he did what he always did when faced with something he couldn't control. He worked harder. He bought more properties, closed bigger deals, appeared on magazine covers with that same calculated smile. But at night, in that massive glass mansion, he was utterly, devastatingly alone. His home became a museum. Every object in its place. Every room temperature controlled. Every surface gleaming and sterile. It was perfect. It was unbearable. Preston barely spoke to his staff. They were functions, not people. The chef cooked. The driver drove. The cleaners cleaned. He moved through his mansion like a man walking through a photograph of someone else's life. And he told himself this was fine. This was survival. This was what control looked like. He was wrong. Elena Rivera arrived on a Tuesday morning in April. She was the 3rd housekeeper that year. The previous 2 hadn't lasted. One quit after 2 weeks. The other simply stopped showing up. Working for Preston Ward wasn't technically difficult. The house was so sterile it barely needed cleaning. But the silence was suffocating. Elena needed the job too badly to care about silence. At 42, she was raising her 10-year-old daughter Maria alone. Her husband had died in a construction accident 4 years earlier, leaving her with medical bills that still followed her like shadows. She worked as a maid for Preston in the mornings, cleaned office buildings at night, slept 5 hours if she was lucky, smiled at Maria every morning and pretended everything was fine, because that's what mothers do. The agency warned her about Preston. He doesn't talk. Don't take it personally. Just clean and leave before evening. So that's what Elena did. She moved through that massive mansion like a ghost, dusted surfaces that weren't dusty, vacuumed carpets that had no footprints, straightened pillows that no one touched. She saw Preston exactly twice in her first month, once in the hallway. He didn't look up from his phone. Once in the kitchen. He left the room when she entered. Elena didn't take it personally. Rich people were different. That's what she told herself. Then came the night that changed everything. Elena had stayed late. Maria was at a sleepover, and Elena needed the overtime. She was finishing the second floor when she passed a music room, a space she'd been told never to clean. Mr. Ward's late wife's room. The head of staff had whispered, "He keeps it locked." But tonight, the door was open, and inside was the most beautiful grand piano Elena had ever seen. She shouldn't have gone in, knew she shouldn't, but something pulled her forward. Maybe it was the way the moonlight hit the keys. Maybe it was exhaustion making her reckless. Maybe it was the fact that Maria had been begging for piano lessons they couldn't afford. Elena sat down, let her fingers hover over the keys. Then she started humming, an old lullaby, one her grandmother used to sing, one she sang to Maria every night. She didn't hear Preston approach, didn't know he'd been working late in his study, drowning in numbers that didn't matter, didn't know that the melody she was humming was the same one Catherine used to sing while cooking breakfast, the same one that used to fill this house with warmth. Preston stood in the doorway, frozen. Elena's voice was soft, unpolished, achingly human. She hummed with her eyes closed, fingers barely touching the keys, swaying slightly like she was somewhere else entirely. And for the first time in 3 years, Preston felt something crack inside his chest. He must have made a sound, a sharp breath, a step forward, because Elena's eyes snapped open. She jumped to her feet, so fast the piano bench scraped against the floor. "Mr. Ward, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. I'll leave right now." "Don't." His voice came out rough, like he'd forgotten how to use it. "Don't stop." Elena stared at him. Preston Ward, the man who never spoke, never looked at her, never acknowledged her existence. He looked different in this light, smaller somehow, tired. "Please," he said quieter. "That song, where did you learn it?" Elena's hands twisted together. "My grandmother. She used to sing it to me. I sing it to my daughter now." Something passed across Preston's face. Pain, recognition, memory. "My wife," he said slowly, "used to sing that too." The air between them felt charged, fragile. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "I didn't know this room was... I shouldn't have... Do you play?" Preston interrupted. "No. I mean a little. My grandmother taught me basics, but we couldn't afford lessons." Preston moved further into the room, stood beside the piano. His hand hovered over the keys like Elena's had moments before. "Catherine played," he said, "every morning. She'd sit here and play while I got ready for work. I used to complain it was too early for music." He laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "I'd give anything to hear it again." Elena didn't know what to say, didn't know if she should stay or go. This man was her boss, her paycheck, the barrier between her and eviction. But he also looked like the loneliest person she'd ever seen. "Would you?" Preston hesitated. "Would you play something? It doesn't have to be good. The house is very quiet." Elena looked at him for a long moment, saw past the expensive suit and the sharp jawline and the aura of untouchable wealth. Saw just a man, grieving, alone. She sat back down at the piano, and she played. After that night, something shifted. Preston started staying late more often, not in his study, in the rooms where Elena was working. At first, he pretended he had reasons, reviewing documents in the library while she dusted, taking calls in the living room while she vacuumed, checking emails in the kitchen while she cleaned counters. But they both knew the truth. He just wanted another person nearby, someone whose presence didn't demand anything from him. And then, slowly, he started talking. "Your daughter," he said one afternoon while Elena folded linens. "How old is she?" 10. Elena answered, surprised he remembered she had a daughter. "What's her name?" "Maria." "Does she look like you?" Elena smiled. "Everyone says she looks like her father." A pause. Then Preston asked quietly, "You said he passed?" "4 years ago. Construction accident." Elena's hands stilled on a pillowcase. 1 minute he was there. The next he wasn't. Just like that. Preston nodded slowly. Catherine went the opposite way. 6 months of hospitals and treatments and hope that kept shrinking. "I don't know which is worse." No time to say goodbye, or too much time to watch someone disappear. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. I think they're both unbearable, she said softly, just in different ways. It was the most honest conversation Preston had had in 3 years. After that, the conversations grew longer, more frequent. Elena told him about working 2 jobs, about Maria's dreams of becoming a teacher, about the small apartment they share with walls so thin they could hear the neighbors breathing. Preston listened in a way he'd forgotten how to listen, without interrupting, without trying to fix things. Just hearing her, and slowly, impossibly, he started to change. He asked Elena to play piano after dinner. The house feels less empty when you do, he explained. So she played. Simple melodies. Children's songs she knew by heart. And Preston would sit in the corner of the music room, eyes closed, something like peace crossing his face. The staff noticed. He smiled at me this morning, the chef whispered. Actually smiled, with his face. He asked how my grandson was doing. The driver said, bewildered. He's never asked about my personal life in 8 years. He's different when Elena is here, the head of staff observed. Like, he remembers he's human. Preston started noticing details he'd ignored for years. The garden needed work. The art on the walls was beautiful. The view from the west windows was spectacular at sunset. He started eating the meals his chef prepared. Started sleeping in his bedroom. Started existing in his home instead of just occupying it. Here's a question. Can someone save you just by being real with you? Have you ever had a person, maybe someone unexpected, remind you who you used to be? Let me know in the comments. And if you're feeling this story, hit that like button. One evening, after Elena finished playing, Preston said something that surprised them both. You remind me of Catherine. Elena's hands froze above the keys. Not in appearance, Preston continued quickly. In the way you move through the world. Like you see things I've forgotten how to see. Catherine used to do that. Point out small things. A bird on the windowsill. The way light hit the floor. She made ordinary moments feel important. He looked down at his hands. I think I stopped seeing those things when she died. Started seeing everything as transactions. Problems to solve. Numbers to manage. And now, Elena asked quietly. Preston met her eyes. Now I'm starting to remember. Because of you. The moment hung between them. Tender, complicated, true. This wasn't romance. Not in the traditional sense. It was something deeper, more fundamental. It was resurrection. The rumor started small. Kitchen staff whispering. The driver mentioning it to his wife. The head of staff expressing concern to the estate manager. Mr. Ward is spending an unusual amount of time with Elena. He specifically asked for her to work late. She plays piano for him. In Mrs. Ward's room, the whispers stayed contained for a while, until they didn't. Preston had enemies. Successful men always do. Corporate rivals who'd lost deals to him. Former partners who felt cheated. Competitors waiting for any weakness. One rival in particular, Marcus Chun, who'd lost a $1 billion contract to Preston 2 years earlier, saw an opportunity. He hired a private investigator. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of surveillance, of long-lens cameras, of documenting every moment Elena entered and left the mansion, and then the photos leaked, not to the press directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, they appeared on a gossip blog known for destroying reputations. Anonymous source, damning images. Preston and Elena in the music room. Her at the piano. Him watching her with an expression that looked, in the frozen moment of a photograph, like longing. Elena bringing him coffee. Preston smiling at her. Her hand briefly touching his arm as she passed him something. Innocent moments. Twisted into scandal. The headline screamed, Billionaire secret affair with housekeeper. Preston Ward's inappropriate relationship exposed. Within hours, it was everywhere. News sites picked it up. Morning shows discussed it. Twitter exploded. Hashtag Preston Ward scandal trended globally. The narrative wrote itself. Wealthy, powerful man exploiting vulnerable employee. Tale as old as time. Another rich predator. Another victim. Never mind that it wasn't true. Never mind that Elena and Preston had never so much as held hands. Never mind that their connection was something entirely different. The world had decided. Elena's phone started ringing at 5 a.m. Reporters outside her apartment. Cameras in her face as she tried to take Maria to school. Ms. Rivera, how long have you been sleeping with Preston Ward? Ms. Rivera, did he promise you money? Ms. Rivera, what do you say to accusations that you seduced a grieving widower? Maria saw the headlines at school, came home crying, asked her mother if the things people were saying were true. Elena held her daughter and felt something inside her break. At the mansion, Preston's phone exploded. His lawyers, his board of directors, his PR team, everyone screaming the same thing. This is a disaster. We need damage control. Now! An emergency meeting was called. Preston sat in his own conference room while 6 people in expensive suits told him how to save his reputation. Elena has to go immediately. We'll offer her a settlement. Enough money to keep her quiet. You need to make a statement denying everything. Blame it on misunderstanding. Inappropriate but innocent. Distance yourself. Completely. Preston listened. Felt numb. Felt the walls closing in. She did nothing wrong, he said finally. That doesn't matter, his lead attorney snapped. Perception is reality. And right now, the perception is destroying your company's stock price. I don't care about the stock price. The room went silent. Preston, his lawyer said slowly, if you don't handle this correctly, you'll lose everything. The company, the board's confidence, your reputation, everything you've built. Preston thought about Elena, about Maria, about how this scandal was destroying their lives, about how he was supposed to protect them and instead had become the thing that hurt them most. Fire her, he said, the words like ash in his mouth. I'll approve the settlement. Make it generous. And the statement? I'll handle it. But he never did, because before he could decide what to say, Elena came to him. She walked into his study, without knocking, still wearing her cleaning uniform, eyes red but voice steady. I'm leaving, she said. I don't want your money. I don't want your settlement. I just want you to know something. Preston stood, tried to find words. I thought you were different, Elena continued. I thought underneath all this, she gestured at the mansion, at his wealth, at everything he represented, there was a good person trying to find his way back. I thought you were someone who could see me, really see me, not as a maid, not as a function, as a person. Elena, but I was wrong, because when it mattered, you chose this. She gestured around the study. This empire, this image. You chose protecting yourself over protecting me, over protecting my daughter. I'm trying to protect you. By firing me? By throwing money at me like I'm a problem to be solved? Her voice cracked. I didn't need your charity, Preston. I needed your respect. I needed you to stand up and tell the truth, that we were friends, that you were grieving and I was kind to you and there was nothing wrong with that. If I say that publicly, they'll destroy you worse. They're already destroying me. Elena's voice rose, then broke. My daughter can't go to school. I can't walk down my street. My face is everywhere with lies attached to it. And you're hiding in your mansion, letting your lawyers handle it. Preston had no answer, because she was right. I thought you remembered how to be human, Elena whispered. But maybe you were just practicing. Maybe I was just another project. Something to make yourself feel better. That's not true. Then prove it. She waited. Preston said nothing. Elena nodded slowly, like he confirmed something she suspected. She cleaned my home, Elena said quietly, throwing his own words back at him. But she also cleaned my soul. Is that what you were planning to tell people? Make me into some kind of magical servant who fixed a broken billionaire? No, Goodbye, Preston. She walked out. Preston stood in his study, surrounded by luxury, drowning in silence. And for the first time in 3 years, he cried. After Elena left, Preston tried to go back to normal. Meetings, acquisitions, the business of being Preston Ward. But the machine had broken, and he couldn't restart it. He'd sit in board meetings and zone out mid-presentation, stand at his office window and forget why he was there, pick up his phone to call someone and realize he had no one to call. The mansion felt different now, not empty like before. Worse, haunted. He'd walk through the music room and hear Elena's humming, past the kitchen and remember her describing Maria's school play, lie in bed and replay her final words over and over. I thought you were different. The panic attack started 2 weeks after Elena left. He'd be in the middle of reviewing contracts and suddenly couldn't breathe. His vision would blur. His hands would shake. The walls would press in. His assistant called 911 the third time it happened. The paramedics found nothing physically wrong. Stress, they said. You need to slow down. But slowing down meant thinking. And thinking meant facing what he'd done. Preston stopped sleeping, would roam his mansion at 3 a.m., turning on every light, trying to fill the silence with anything. His board noticed, started having conversations without him, started using words like instability and liability and replacement. Preston Ward, the man who'd built an empire on control, was losing control of everything. One night, he found himself in the music room again, standing where Elena used to sit, staring at the piano like it held answers. He remembered the first night, her humming, the way his frozen heart had cracked just slightly. He remembered all the evenings after, her playing simple melodies while he sat in the corner, feeling almost human. He remembered her words about Catherine. She made ordinary moments feel important. And he realized Elena had done the same thing. For a few brief weeks, she'd made him feel like life was worth living. Like grief wasn't forever. Like he could be more than the machine he'd become. And when the world judged her, when she needed him to be brave, he'd chosen safety, chosen his reputation over her dignity, chosen his empire over her humanity. Preston sat down at the piano, put his hands on the keys, and played the lullaby Elena used to hum. Badly, wrong notes, broken rhythm. But he played it anyway. And somewhere in the middle of that imperfect melody, Preston Ward made a decision. He couldn't undo what happened, couldn't take back his cowardice, but he could choose differently now. The next morning, he called an emergency board meeting. I'm resigning, he said, effective immediately. The room erupted. Questions, protests, panic. Preston didn't answer any of it, just signed the papers, stood up, and walked out his own company. The media went wild. Preston Ward loses his mind. Billionaire has breakdown. From mogul to meltdown. Preston didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was doing something that wasn't about building or winning or controlling. He was doing something right. 6 months of silence. Preston disappeared from public view, sold his mansion, donated most of his wealth, lived in a modest house, and spent his days working on something new. Not another business, not another empire. A foundation for domestic workers, for single mothers, for people like Elena who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford piano lessons for their kids, child care assistance, education scholarships, legal support, healthcare access, dignified wages. He called it the Elena Rivera Foundation. He didn't ask her permission, didn't even know if she'd forgive him, but he did it anyway, because it was right. Because it was what he should have done from the beginning. When he finally held a press conference to announce it, the room was packed. Everyone wanted to see Preston Ward's next move. He walked to the podium. No prepared statement. No PR team. Just him. 6 months ago, he began, I made the worst decision of my life. I let someone who showed me kindness get destroyed because I was too afraid to tell the truth. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Her name is Elena Rivera. She worked in my home as a housekeeper, and she became my friend. That's it. That's the scandal. A man and a woman from different worlds became friends. He paused. When rumors started, when the media twisted our friendship into something ugly, I should have defended her. Should have stood up and said, yes, we're friends, and there's nothing wrong with that. Instead, I let my lawyers handle it, let her take the fall, prioritize my reputation over her life. The room was silent now. Elena once said something to me. She said, "I thought you remembered how to be human." She was right, for a brief moment. I did. She reminded me of everything I'd buried after my wife died. Empathy, connection, the ability to see people as people, not functions. Preston's voice strengthened. This foundation is my attempt to do what I should have done from the beginning, to use my resources to support the people who make our lives possible, but who we've made invisible. The housekeepers, the caregivers, the single mothers working multiple jobs, the people who clean our homes and raise our children and hold our world together while we refuse to see them. He looked directly at the cameras. I can't undo what I did to Elena, can't take back my cowardice, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to be the person she thought I could be. A reporter called out, "Mr. Ward, are you saying you're in love with Elena Rivera?" Preston smiled sadly. "I'm saying she cleaned my home, but she also cleaned my soul." The room exploded. That quote was on every news site within minutes, trending worldwide within the hour. But Preston didn't see any of it. He'd already left the stage. He had work to do. Okay, pause. Would you forgive someone who let the world destroy your reputation, even if they try to make it right? This is complex. Drop your take in the comments. And if this story is hitting different, share it with someone who needs to hear it. 1 year later, the Elena Rivera Foundation held its first scholarship ceremony. 200 recipients. 200 lives changed. Preston gave a short speech about second chances and seeing people clearly, about how easy it is to make others invisible when we're not paying attention. As he spoke, he scanned the crowd out of habit, and then he saw her, Elena, in the back row, wearing a simple blue dress, Maria beside her, wearing a scholarship recipient badge. Their eyes met across the room. Elena didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. After the ceremony, Preston found her in the hallway. Elena, Preston, Maria was talking to other students nearby, giving them a moment of privacy. "I didn't know if you'd come," Preston said. "I almost didn't, but Maria insisted. She wanted to thank the foundation personally. She earned it. Her essay was exceptional." An awkward pause. "You didn't have to do this," Elena said finally, gesturing at the event. "The foundation, the scholarships, none of it." "Yes, I did. Not for forgiveness. I don't expect that. For accountability." Elena studied him. "You look different, lighter somehow. I sold a mansion, moved to a regular house, spend my days working with a foundation instead of building empires." He smiled slightly. "Turns out I like this better." "Good." Another pause. "Elena, I need you to know I'm sorry for not defending you, for prioritizing my image over your life, for being a coward when you needed me to be brave." Elena's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. "You hurt me, Preston. You let them hurt me. You let my daughter see her mother torn apart in the news while you hid behind lawyers. I know. Do you? Do you know what it was like? Having strangers scream questions at me? Having Maria come home crying because kids at school saw the headlines. I can't imagine. No, you can't, because you've never been invisible. You've never been powerless. You've never had your dignity stripped away because someone with more money and power decided their comfort was worth more than your humanity." Preston absorbed this, nodded. "You're right. I don't forgive you," Elena said clearly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know. I understand." But Elena's voice softened slightly. "I see what you're doing. This foundation. The work. It matters. It's helping people like me. People who need someone powerful to actually see them. That's because of you. You taught me how to see again." Maria ran over, excited. "Mom, they said I can apply for the summer program. The one with the internships." Elena's face transformed. All the hardness melted into pure maternal pride. "That's wonderful, baby." Maria turned to Preston. "Are you the one who started this?" "I am." "Thank you. My mom says college was impossible before this scholarship. Now it's not." Preston felt something catch in his throat. Your mom is an extraordinary person. You're lucky to have her. I know, Maria said simply. Then she hugged Elena and ran back to her friends. Elena watched her daughter go, then turned back to Preston. Keep doing this work, she said. Not for me, not for redemption. For every woman who's been invisible, every person who's been overlooked, every kid like Maria who deserves a chance. I will. Then maybe, Elena paused, maybe eventually we can find a way to be friends again. Real friends. Not the kind that fall apart when things get hard. I'd like that. But it'll take time. A lot of time. I have time. Elena nodded, started to leave, then stopped and turned back. Preston, I'm glad you remembered how to be human. Keep remembering. Then she was gone, Maria's hand in hers, walking toward a future that was finally bright. Preston stood in the empty hallway, surrounded by photos of scholarship recipients, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not yet, but hope, and that was enough. So what does this story really teach us? On the surface, it's about class and power and scandal and redemption. But look deeper, and it's about something we all struggle with. Seeing people, really seeing them, not as functions, not as stereotypes, not as background characters in our own stories, as human beings, complex, valuable, worthy of dignity. Preston had spent years making people invisible, his staff, his employees, anyone who wasn't useful to his empire. It took Elena, someone he'd dismissed as just a maid, to show him what he'd lost, his humanity. And here's the thing that makes this story so powerful. Elena didn't set out to change Preston. She didn't have a plan or an agenda. She just existed honestly in his sterile world. She hummed. She talked about her daughter. She played simple melodies on a piano. She refused to make herself smaller to fit his expectations. And that authenticity, that refusal to be invisible, cracked something open in him. But the story doesn't end with a fairy tale, because real transformation isn't about grand gestures. It's about accountability. Preston failed Elena when it mattered most. Let his fear make the decision. Chose comfort over courage. And he can't undo that. Can't erase the pain he caused her and Maria. But he can choose differently now. Can spend his life working to be worthy of the person Elena thought he could be. The foundation isn't about redemption. It's about recognition. Recognition that domestic workers matter, that single mothers deserve support, that the people we've made invisible are actually the ones holding our world together. Preston and Elena's story isn't about romance. It's about two people who reminded each other what it means to be human. She showed him how to feel again. He's showing her that powerful people can change, can choose accountability over image. Neither of them is perfect. Both of them are trying. And maybe that's the real lesson. We're all capable of making people invisible. We're all capable of choosing our comfort over someone else's dignity. But we're also capable of changing, of doing better, of seeing the people we've overlooked and saying, "You matter. I see you. I'm sorry." So here's my final question. Who in your life deserves to be seen? Not fixed, not saved, just seen. Comment below. And if this story made you think twice about how you treat people, give it a like, subscribe for more stories that matter, and turn on notifications. Because we're just getting started. See you in the next one.